Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. That's why you need Shopify. They'll help you create a convenient, unified command center for whatever your business throws at you, whether you sell online, in-store, or both. You can sell the way you want, attract the customers you need, and keep them coming back. Turn those what-ifs into why-nots with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer. That's shopify.com/special offer.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Just 3 words resonate across any NFL conversation, and they are any given Sunday. Were you not entertained? Stunning plays, drama, tension, all the excitement that only the NFL brings, and there was so very much more in Week 1, including a first ever tie in the Graves on Gridiron picks. Week 1 literally had everything. But time waits for no man, and it's no different on the Graves on Gridiron podcast either. It's time already to turn that page and look ahead to Week 2 in the NFL.
Graves on Gridiron with Richard Graves.
Hello, welcome along to the show. This is Graves on Gridiron. I am your host, Richard Graves. The NFL is back, and Week 1 literally had everything. There was some familiarity about it as well. The Cleveland Browns, well, let's be honest, they did Browns things, didn't they? Remember, Dustin Hopkins, their veteran kicker, was beaten out in a competition in pre-season. The kicker they brought in to replace him missed field goals, missed extra points, ultimately missed opportunity for Cleveland against their AFC North rivals, the Cincinnati Bengals. And what are the New York Giants? Well, they looked pretty much like the New York Giants we've come to expect as they went down to the Washington Commanders as well. But the game of the week, without doubt, surely had to be Sunday Night Football, the Bills and the Ravens. It was a game we previewed and picked in the opening week of the season show along with Charles Dagnall last week. And it was one of 3 games that I can't dress this up anyway, other than to say it flat out, folks. We got it wrong in Week 1. Week 1 can be an outlier, but we got it wrong. 0-2-1 was the record. I mentioned in an introduction, a first ever tie. It was that Sunday Night Football game between the Bills and Ravens. Bills were 1-point favorites. Ravens were 1-point underdogs. Daggers took the Bills. I took the Ravens. The Bills won by a point. It was a push. There's nothing to say more than that. So it's 0-2-1 because, of course, Daggers was upset about this as well when I spoke to him prior to recording. We picked the Steelers against the Jets. The Jets were 2.5-point underdogs, Steelers 2.5-point favorites. Both myself and Daggers said back the Steelers. They won the game by 2 points, meant we were half a point out. Charles Dagnall doesn't like that. So the one message he's got for me to relate to all our listeners is Week 1 is moral victory week. He feels there's been moral victories in both the Bills, Ravens, and the Steelers Jets game. We won't talk about the Lions and Packers because we both took the Lions as 3-point underdogs, and it wasn't even close. They never led in the game. The Packers were hugely impressive, so the Lions have got work to do. But never let it be said that we don't get overreactions to one set of results. And I'll refer to my friends at The Athletic for this because it made me chuckle somewhat looking at the reactions to Week 1 and just on the back of those opening game results. Super Bowl champions, they've got the Buffalo Bills now. MVP for the season, who else would it be but the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, Daniel Jones? He led 7 drives in the game for the Indianapolis Colts. They scored on all 7. They blew out the Miami Dolphins. After Week 1, he's the NFL's MVP. Rookie of the Year, Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver Emeka Egbuka for 2 touchdowns in the Buccaneers win on the road against divisional rivals, the Atlanta Falcons. Defensive Player of the Year. Look, he played less than 50% of the snaps, but he influenced the game, and on the back of a huge trade from the Dallas Cowboys to the Green Bay Packers. After Week 1, the Defensive Player of the Year for The Athletic, defensive end Micah Parsons. And also, what extra one? Catch of the Year. I loved DeAndre Hopkins' touchdown grab for the Baltimore Ravens against the Buffalo Bills, but they've gone for the one score the Lions got in Lambeau Field. Wide receiver Isaac Tesla. And if you didn't see it, look up the highlights. It was a sensational one-handed grab as he's falling back out of the end zone, gets both feet down. I'm looking at it now. It's a contender right here, right now for catch of the season. And we're 1 week in. There's still another 17 of the regular season to go, the postseason on top of that. But like I said, week one literally had everything. And we're going to start this week 2 podcast by reviewing that Sunday night football game because it lived up to the hype and then some. Of course, a little bit of background to this coming off the back of the playoff contest between these two sides at the same venue in Buffalo during the postseason last time around. The Ravens had an opportunity to score a 2-point conversion and take the game to overtime. And Mark Andrews, of all people, their experienced veteran tight end, dropped the ball right in his breadbasket on the goal line. And that was enough to see the Buffalo Bills progress. Well, this time around, the Ravens dominated large portions of this game. They were up by 2 scores late into the fourth quarter. In fact, I've written it down with 7:26 left to play in the game. They led the Bills by 15 points. The Bills had missed a couple of 2-point conversion opportunities, but perhaps the play that you didn't notice in this game that ultimately would make the biggest difference, the last touchdown the Ravens scored, the extra point was missed. It was a doink off the upright. That would go on to prove pivotal, because back would come the Buffalo Bills, score 2 touchdowns, not able to get a 2-point conversion. That meant they trailed by 2 going into the final 2 minutes of the game. They managed to grab a couple of first downs, and then Mike Prater, with the last kick of the game, 3 seconds on the clock, converts a 36-yard field goal opportunity to send Buffalo wild, Bills Mafia wild, and give the Bills the opening victory of the season. But you look back at that, I think Josh Allen was outstanding. Remember, he's the reigning NFL MVP. He made plays with his legs, made plays with his arm, some absolutely on-the-money throws to Kenyon Coleman, their wide receiver, as well, when it mattered most. The other side of the ball, give the flowers to Lamar Jackson. Tongue-in-cheek last week, I asked Charles Dagnall, is Lamar Jackson the AFC's equivalent of Dak Prescott? Well, Lamar Jackson made plays on Sunday night. We all know what he can do with his legs, but he kept plays alive as well. And Zay Flowers was his main go-to guy. But I think also the addition of DeAndre Hopkins, a veteran wide receiver presence. Okay, he might not be the player he was in his prime 4 or 5 years ago, but he's able to make the tough catches in traffic under pressure, and none more so than the touchdown grab he made as well, with a defensive back hanging all over him. I think that could be pivotal in the Ravens season this time around. When they need a play, when it's clutch, maybe DeAndre Hopkins is going to be that man for them. Derrick Henry at running back. He had 190-odd yards on the ground in the regular season against the Bills last year. The last time I checked, he was over 175 in this encounter, but he had the all-important fumble, which gave possession back to the Bills late on in the game. And fair play to him, he came out afterwards and said, "This defeat is on me." I think that's magnanimous. It's a leader standing up in the dressing room. I've got to say, Derrick Henry, I disagree with you. I think this defeat is on that Ravens defense. You're up 2 scores on the road, in a hostile environment against a conference rival, and you've got a chance to lay down a marker in the opening weekend of the season. This is a team which is known for its defense. It's built on defense, and you can't get the job done. Are you kidding me? There will be some soul-searching going on in Baltimore this weekend. I think the Ravens' offense was awesome for week 1. On the road, I think they did a stunning job on the Buffalo Bills. They put 40 points on the board. If you cannot defend 40 points when you're on the road, you've got to be looking at yourself and asking some serious questions. This is meant to be one of the best defensive units in the NFL. What we saw on Sunday night from the Baltimore Ravens defense was not one of the best defensive units in the NFL right now. They have a chance early to have a get-right game this coming weekend. They take on divisional rivals, the Cleveland Browns. I've already touched upon what the Browns did against the Bengals. This will be an opportunity for Baltimore. They're heavy 12.5-point favorites. and I expect them to make a statement in this game because that's what good players do. They bounce back from a disappointment, and they need to bounce back and show the world who they really are this time around. That won't be one of the games we're looking at, though, as we enter week 3. I have 3 games for you, and before we go into them in detail, I will tell you what they are. They are the Patriots and the Dolphins, 2 teams who picked up L's in week 1, looking to get back to 500 after week 2 with their record. It's the New York Giants against the Dallas Cowboys, another 2 teams who tasted defeat in the opening weekend of the season, now in a divisional rival matchup, both badly needing a win, and both, I think, on different trajectories as well, despite suffering similar results. And then the third game is the LA Chargers against the Las Vegas Raiders, 2 teams who perhaps surprisingly picked up victories in week 1, 2 teams who are not playing on home turf, but getting the job done. So without further ado, let's look ahead to our opening matchup at week 2. We on the show have got some work to do as well. I've spoken about the Ravens. Well, when you're 0-2 and wanting picks, you need to start chalking up some victories on the board. So we'll start with the New England Patriots at the Miami Dolphins down there in South Florida. Miami go into this game as 1.5-point favorites. It is a narrow line, and that is on the back of Miami Dolphins in being embarrassed on the road in Indy last weekend. They lost by 30 points to 8. Daniel Jones effectively jettisoned by the New York Giants for not being good enough. Well, he was good enough for the Colts last weekend, let me tell you. 7 drives, 7 scoring drives. That's the first time that has been done, that a quarterback has led his team to a score on every drive of the game since way back in the 1970s, since the merger. It is an astonishing record. But this was a game that Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, looked frankly lost at times. He completed barely 50% of his passes, 14 of 23 for just a measly 114 total yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. He didn't seem to read the field at all well during the game. Now, look, the Colts defense is a good unit, and they can do that to you. But when you've got players like Devon Achane, at running back, you've got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle at wide receiver. You've got weapons to make something happen here. And I'm not going to let the Dolphins defense off the hook here either. I get that their offense put them in some tight situations, but you've allowed your opponents to march up and down the field on you, whether it's a short field or long field. They put 30 points on the board. The game was long gone by the time the Dolphins responded and got a score of their own and avoided being shut out. And yet, I'm going to point to the fact that this game is being played in South Florida. 1.5-point favorites? Really? In the last 2 years, the Miami Dolphins are 12-5 when playing at home. Home field advantage is a thing at this time of the year, especially in South Florida. The conditions, the heat, the humidity, if you're not used to it, it takes a toll. And now look who's coming into town. Young New England Patriots side who come off the back of a disappointing opening game defeat at home to the Las Vegas Raiders last weekend. It was a close game. They were competitive. It was Mike Vrabel's first game as head coach of the Patriots, but they lost it by 20 points to 13. They had 60 total rushing yards on 18 attempts. It's not enough. They need to have a run game. It wasn't there. They've got Travion Henderson, their rookie running back, as well now in the backfield. He had 25 yards on, I think, a handful of attempts, 5 or 6 attempts, maybe. Drake May, their second-year quarterback, did okay. Completed 30 of 46 passes for 287 yards, 1 touchdown to Douglas, 1 interception. You don't really want your quarterback dropping back to throw 46 times. And in a game like this that was tight for long, it highlights that the running game wasn't getting it done, that they felt they did need to drop their quarterback on 46 occasions to try and get the job done through the air. What I will say on a positive on defense, Ashton Genty comes into the league with a big reputation. This first-round pick, running back of the Las Vegas Raiders. He only managed 38 total yards on the ground from 19 rushing attempts. So defensively, they were quite stout. Offensively, they struggled. And I cannot believe that the Miami Dolphins are going to be anywhere near as bad on offense as what they were last weekend. I've mentioned home field advantage and their record playing at home over the last 2 years. You would like to think that players like Tyreek Hill, like Jalen Waddle, like Tua Tagovailoa, like head coach Mike McDaniel will feel hurt by what we saw and what was put out there on tape for us all to see last weekend in Indy, and we will get a response this weekend. New England traditionally don't have a great record playing on the road in Miami, even in the heyday with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady at quarterback. This was the fixture in the division which they struggled at on the road to Miami. I think that's going to come into play again. And when you consider that on that Miami defense, you've got pass rusher Bradley Chubb, who did make some plays in that heavy defeat to Indianapolis. You've got Micah Fitzpatrick at safety as well, back in Miami, having been traded back to the Dolphins by the Steelers in the offseason. This is an opportunity now for the Dolphins to have a get-right game, to blow away the cobwebs and say, you know what, week one was an outlier for us. I like the Dolphins at home in this game. I like them even more when I see the line is just 1.5 points. Take Miami not only to win, but take them to cover at minus 1.5 as well. So with that 2 games still to come, we've picked the Patriots and Dolphins. We still have the New York Giants at the Dallas Cowboys, the Chargers at the Raiders. Those 2 games previewed next on Graves on Gridiron.
Graves on Gridiron with Richard Graves.
Okay, welcome back to the show. We've already looked at the Patriots and Dolphins, an AFC East rivalry. We're crossing over to the NFC East next. The Giants and the Cowboys, 2 teams who suffered losses in week 1. The New York Giants disappointing at home to another divisional rival, the Washington Commanders. The Dallas Cowboys lost to the reigning Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. But I would suggest to you there was cause for optimism in that performance. Let's start, first of all, with the road team in this game, the New York Giants. I've got to say, disappointingly, different faces, different players, different pieces. Same old lethargic, stale New York Giants team in a 21-6 loss to the Washington Commanders. Russell Wilson, again, much of what we saw when he played both in Pittsburgh last season and Denver before that. 17 of 37 passes completed for just 168 total yards. He led the team on the ground, 8 running attempts for 44 yards. And when you consider the duo in the backfield of Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary, failed to average 3 yards per carry on 13 attempts combined, that's a problem for the Giants. Andrew Thomas, their first-round pick left tackle, experienced veteran now. Once again, the injury bug seems to have caught up with him. He missed out last weekend. At wide receiver, Malik Neighbors is a stud. Wan'Dale Robinson was impressive last week. But again, you need your stud players to stand up when you're struggling. And Malik Neighbors dropped balls that you really feel he should have been catching last weekend. Will he be better for that performance? Will we see an improvement in his play this weekend? You would certainly hope so. And they're going to need that to be the case if they're to get a win on the road in Dallas. Because whilst they also lost in Philly on kickoff night to the Eagles, I've got to tell you, I was mightily surprised, pleasantly so, by the way they played on offense. Dak Prescott came out looking leaner, fitter than I can remember seeing him in a long time. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens in the first half made plays. Dak and Dallas were winging it down the field and picking apart the Eagles' secondary. They had 3 opening drives, 3 scores on those drives. Javonte Williams, their free agent signing, come over from the Denver Broncos at running back, brought a physicality to the run game. And this is the big thing for the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott looks better when he's got a strong run game. And by that, I mean, if Dallas need 2-3 yards, they can hand it off to the running back and he's going to get it. We saw that with Ezekiel Elliott in his prime. Tony Pollard, towards the end of his Cowboys career, was able to supply that option as well. The last couple of years haven't really seen it so much, and this Dallas Cowboys offense and Dak Prescott has struggled well against the Eagles, albeit minus Jalen Carter for an unfortunate spitting incident. Let's leave it at that, shall we? And weren't able to stop Javonte Williams, particularly in that first half. He sought out contact. He kept the legs churning. He picked up first downs in short yardage to gain situations. I think this weekend we probably see the introduction of their rookie running back, Jaden Blue, as well, a change of pace back, which will give them an added dimension. And equally defensively, Dallas stopped Saquon Barkley last weekend. He only had 60 yards rushing on the ground, which I think was his fewest rush yards since back in week 5 or 6 of last season. Jalen Hurts, on the other hand, he was able to make plays with his legs when it mattered most, and Dallas didn't really seem to have much of an answer for that. The good news is Russ Wilson isn't the Russ Wilson of 10 years ago, and he doesn't readily make plays with his legs quite so much now, so that won't necessarily be an issue for this Cowboys offense. What will be, and they will want to put right, in the case of the dropsies. Make no mistake, folks, Dallas could have won that game in Philadelphia had the wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb in particular, made plays on the ball when it mattered most. And CeeDee Lamb, frankly, flat out dropped a couple of passes. One right at the end of the game, hugely difficult. One a couple of plays before that. It was thrown on a rope from Dak Prescott. Bisected the coverage, right in CeeDee's breadbasket. He flat out drops the ball. Who knows what happens if that catch is made? As it was, Dallas are now 0-1. If they have any real hopes of making a playoff run this year, given the strength of schedule that they face, they have to be winning this game. They're 5-point favorites going into it, and I don't think that's a problem. Frankly, on the basis of what we saw from the Giants at home last weekend, they weren't even able to make it to the end zone. They had a couple of field goals to show for their efforts. 21-6, it wasn't that close. The Commanders just weren't ruthless enough for me. They controlled the game. They were never really in any trouble. They scored a touchdown towards the end of the game to make the scoreline a bit more emphatic. But I think if the situation called for it, I think the Commanders could have put on another 10 points against this New York Giants team. And they didn't really offer anything themselves in the way of a counterpunch. So if the Cowboys offense is the same Cowboys offense we saw in the opening half of football against the Eagles last weekend, and the defense plays as it did in the second half, I think it's another long night for the New York Giants on both sides of the ball. Take the Dallas Cowboys to right the ship, get their record back to 500. Take the Cowboys to cover at -5. Our final game then is the Chargers at the Raiders. Two teams who picked up W's in week 1. Two teams who the odds makers did not fancy. The Chargers, of course, played in Brazil on Friday night against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Raiders had to go cross-country to New England to play the Patriots. One thing I think does stand out in the favor of the LA Chargers here is they've had a couple more days to prepare for the Las Vegas Raiders coming into this one. And even though the Chargers are the road team, the odds makers have them as 3-point favorites coming into this. I think we need to keep an eye on the status of the much-touted Raiders tight end, Brock Bowers. He left the game against New England with a knee injury last weekend. It was a non-contact injury as well, which is always a red flag and a cause for concern. What I will say is he spoke to NFL Network's Tom Pelissero following the game and said it was nothing major. He'll be good to go. Worth keeping an eye on because I think this Raiders offense goes as Brock Bowers goes. Remember, he had around 1,200 receiving yards last year. He was outstanding in his rookie season, and he went over 100 receiving yards last Sunday against New England as well before he had to exit the game. The Chargers, they gave up 2 passes worth 47 yards and a touchdown to Travis Kelce last weekend. Kelce scoring a touchdown in the second half. He's not the same player he once was, but that might be an area to watch and for the Raiders to exploit. Remember, they've got Michael Mayer as well, another former first-round pick at tight end for the Raiders. So if Bowers isn't good to go, he will presumably see an increased workload. But if Bowers is good to go in that game, he may well have a big game against this Chargers secondary on Sunday. Geno Smith, I've got to say I was impressed with him as well. Remember, he was a free agent acquisition from the Seattle Seahawks in the offseason. He provided stability, I thought. His experience showed through in New England. Didn't really set the place alight. Didn't need to. He managed the game. What I will say is that Ashton Genty, their rookie running back, don't feel really got going. He had plenty of touches in that game, 19 rush attempts, only 38 rushing yards. But what you do tend to find is that rookie running backs just take a game or two for it to slow down, to see the gaps open up. And the key to being a rookie running back in the NFL is having patience. We saw that on a couple of occasions with Derrick Henry and Miles Sanders in games in week one, showing their veteran savvy, patience. The gap opens up and away you go. Just occasionally, you'll see running backs come into the league in their first season, that keen, that eager to get going. They hit the line before blockers have had time to open up lanes ahead of them. Whether that changes this weekend, time will tell, but certainly they're going to feed Ashton Jeanty the ball. He will be given an opportunity to run the ball against this Chargers defense. And then remember, on the other side of the ball, offensively is really where the problems have largely lied for the Raiders over the last few years. On defense, Pete Carroll has added some physicality in the offseason. Devin White, the Super Bowl winning linebacker from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led the team in tackles last weekend in New England. Jamal Adams, the veteran safeties now in Las Vegas. We all know about the standout stud pass rusher, Max Crosby, as well. So there is a semblance of stability about the Raiders team. Was week one an outlier, or is it a sign of things to come? Well, this week will go a long way to telling us a lot more about them. I told you last weekend that I am high on the LA Chargers. They went down to Brazil. They got the upset win over the Kansas City Chiefs, 27-21. And Justin Herbert, way to bounce back from your veteran quarterback, had one of his most disappointing games in his career in the postseason loss to the Houston Texans in his previous outing for the Chargers, where he bounces back game one of the new 2025 season. 25 of 34 passes completed, 318 yards, 3 touchdown passes completed as well. He also used his legs to make plays. And I think a big thing about this was the Chargers never trailed in that win over the Kansas City Chiefs. Rookie running back, they've got one of those as well, Amarian Hampton, second running back taken in this draft. He took the bulk of the workload on the ground for the Chargers, 15 running attempts, 48 yards on, 15 for 48 yards, 90 yards total on the ground for the Chargers. So typical Jim Harbaugh team, they are going to commit to the run, set up the play action, and work off of that. And that will be another interesting dynamic, I feel, in this game. Keenan Allen's now back on familiar territory, in a familiar surroundings with the Chargers, having been away in Chicago. He made plays last weekend, had 7 catches. Quentin Johnston had holding 2 touchdown catches as well. And then on defense, they've got the former Raider, Khalil Mack. Again, you know with Khalil Mack, whenever he plays the Raiders, he wants to prove a point. That chip on his shoulder never goes away, and it won't this weekend either. I think this is going to be one of the sneaky good matchups of the weekend. Chargers 3-point favorites on the road. Can they get it done? I think they can. I'm not buying it just yet, what the Raiders are selling. They were impressive without being outstanding last weekend. The Chargers showed me a little bit more. I think now they're going to Las Vegas, playing against a division rival. I said last week, I think 3 teams from the AFC West go to the postseason this time around. I think it's the Broncos, the Chiefs, and the Chargers. That means the Raiders are the odd team out. Games like this will either prove me right or prove me wrong. The Chargers are 3-point favorites. I'm backing them to go into Las Vegas and get the job done. Take the Chargers at -3. So those are the 3 games that we're previewing this weekend. It was the most inauspicious of starts for myself and Charles Dagnall in our week 1 preview. Not a win on the board. 0-2-1 is the record. It doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, does it? But as I said right at the top of the show, week 1 can often be an outright liar in the NFL. I took you through some of the headlines, tongue-in-cheek, MVP, Super Bowl winners. It's overreaction week in the NFL. We've been starved of competitive football that long. Everybody will have takes of one game. Week 2 tells you a little bit more, and this will tell you a little bit more about our picks as well, I reckon. So, to recap, Patriots at Dolphins, take Miami to cover at -1.5. Then it's an NFC East encounter. The New York Giants, the Dallas Cowboys. Take the Cowboys as 5-point favorites to cover at -5 before we finish in Las Vegas. The Raiders hosting the Chargers. Take the road team on this one. The Chargers to cover at -3. I'm pretty confident we'll go 3-0, and our record on the picks will look a whole lot better heading into week 3. As I always point out at this juncture in the show, it's about, first and foremost, having fun. This is a bit of interest, if you like, to accompany your Sunday night viewing of NFL action. Take it in that context. It's how it's intended, and we're hoping to get to winning ways after week 2. 3 games picked. There's a whole raft to enjoy as well. Honorable mentions will go to the Broncos and Colts. That'll tell us a lot about those two teams. The Eagles and Chiefs as well. A rematch from Super Bowl 59 last year. The Eagles prevailed in New Orleans. Will they prevail in Kansas City this weekend? We'll find out, and we'll have reactions to that next week as well. We look forward to having you back then for another episode of Graves on Gridiron.
Subscribe to Graves on Gridiron wherever you listen to podcasts. And keep up to date with the latest on Twitter. Search for Richard Graves 1. That's Richard Graves, the number 1.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.